We didn't grow up knowing what executive function skills were. Life felt overwhelming. Managing time, staying organized, and feeling stuck made everything difficult. What we didn't realize was that we lacked the skills to plan, prioritize, and break goals into manageable steps. After years of trial and error, we've seen how powerful executive function skills can be. With expert interviews, real stories, and practical strategies, this podcast is the resource we wish we had. Whether you're a student, parent, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential. Welcome to the Executive Function for All podcast. Today, we're honored to welcome Jodi Sleeper-Triplett, who is one of the pioneers of ADHD coaching and the founder of JST Coaching and Training. Jodi developed the first International Coaching Federation accredited training program for coaching students with ADHD. This is a model that is now used worldwide. In this episode, Jodi shares insights from 30 years of supporting students with ADHD. She's discussed what's changed, where gaps remain, and what truly works for these kids. I'm excited to share this one, and let's begin. Jodi, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I can't tell you how excited I am. You're just such a pioneer in this field, and I've followed your work for a long time, and I'm so grateful you took the time today.
Well, thank you for having me, Brandon. And it's always exciting to me to meet and connect with people who are sort of spreading the word about the value of coaching and really helping students in a new way. So it's fun to talk to someone who's doing it now in the 21st century compared to when I was doing it, started in the old days.
Yeah, well, I guess let's jump in there. So you've been doing this for 30 years, which is wild because even the knowledge of ADHD and even the awareness of it is so much different. So, I mean, from your perspective, being in this field for so long, what positive changes have you seen over the past 30 years?
Well, I think the big one for me that always comes to mind is back then when I was the only person working with younger people, with kids, K-12 versus adults. Most professionals didn't believe that it was possible. It's like, well, you can't coach kids because they can't make choices, they can't make decisions, you have to do it for them. It's like, whoa, this is not the case. And so I always talk about the fact that, it's a testament to the fact that I'm still here. Obviously, I'm doing something right. But what I found over time was that people needed results, understandably. It's like when, something's researched and it's like, oh, wow, I guess that works. So it took a while, and we're still trying to get more research out there. But the increased awareness and the level of interest in research, more research, and really looking at how do we manage complex diagnoses, because we know that ADHD doesn't stand alone. That wasn't even in the conversation. It was just, oh, the doctor said, hey, here's a prescription, but before you fill the prescription, go see Jodi. I was like, what? That's what you need to do. She'll explain it all to you because I don't have time. And she's the expert. We're not the expert. And so a lot of times parents would come in with their child before they went any further, trying to figure out, well, I don't want to drug my child. Now we have such a solid bank of data to be able to help people realize that they don't have to be as scared. So the fear factor, in my experience, is gone down.
What were those early conversations 30 years ago like? Like you alluded to one, like it's so wild to me that people could be like, oh, you can't coach a kid. Like they're not capable of accepting. Like what a crazy statement. But I'm sure you must have heard stuff like that all the time.
I did. And both from professionals and parents. I've had families where one parent would be, oh, come on over. I used to do a lot in person. Come over, we'll meet, we'll see what you have to offer, talk to our kid. And, that was great. But oftentimes the parent who happened to be the one that had maybe undiagnosed or untreated ADHD would typically get up and walk out of the room in the middle, just disappear. I got used to it after a while, which isn't saying much, because what I really wanted to do is say, what if your child's life went more smoothly than yours? Because there's so much masking and compensating for deficits and hiding it that now here I was coming in saying, you don't have to hide this. We just have to figure out how to help you learn better. And that wasn't readily accepted. It was like, well, but they need therapy, or he needs a kick in the pants, excuse me. But that's what was being said.
That was actually going to be one of my questions was like, can we spank this out of him or something like that? because, and I have phenomenal parents, but those are a lot of the things that I heard growing up being in my 40s. So I'm sure you must have encountered that.
Oh, absolutely. Adults that I would meet that would tell me how they were punished. And it pushed me further and further into figuring out, how do I do the best for kids? Because no one deserves to be punished, to be belittled and bullied and shamed for being who they are. And it took a long time for that to be accepted. However, I was fortunate enough living where I do in the Washington, D.C. area, that the doctors, the pediatricians that I spoke to, because back then you'd go walk around, you'd mail things out and go door to door. And the pediatricians were excited because it's like, wow, we only have 20 minutes or 30 minutes with this child. We've got to do a full exam, and then we're supposed to talk about ADHD, and we're just developing developmental pediatric support, because that was all new then too. So it's like, we're just going to send them all to you. And they did. And for me, it wasn't about, wow, I have more clients. It was, how can I help you to be okay with who you are? And parents, how can we get to a point where you look at the core of what's really important to you? You know, what do you want from your children? Is it about their grades? Is it about sitting up straight? I've had people who say, I want my 10-year-old to be able to sit at a table, know which fork to use, know when to do this, how to behave as a little man. And professionally, you know, you try really hard not to just say, oh my gosh, is that what's important to you? That you go to some event and your child has to be perfect when they have trouble sitting still. Let's focus on what you can do for your child and with your child so that they can enjoy themselves. And also you can say, this is just how my kid is right now, and it's okay, and love them rather than being embarrassed by them and making them never want to go out with you again.
I love that's where you started, because I feel like that's where a lot of the current work is as well. You and I see this all the time. The amount of relationships between parents and kids we see get trashed over math homeworks and table manners. And like, I always try to remind parents, like, I'm 40 years old with ADHD and I still need my mother, right? It's like, you have to play the long game. And so I love that's where you started even 30 years ago.
Yeah. And I think that the blaming on, well, it has to be, this is still prevalent, is, well, it's their ADHD. There's nothing we can do about it. They're never going to be successful because they have this. No, that is a part of who they are. But as long as we work on structure, strategies, and skills, your child can be anything, anyone, and be successful. It just might not look like what you want it to look like.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's hard for parents. And I get it. We all have hopes and dreams for our children, but that doesn't mean that they're going to go down that path.
What do you say to the 50, 60, 70-year-old and beyond who has ADHD and grew up in this environment full of shame?
First, to acknowledge that that was the time and it was wrong, and it's always going to be wrong, and to find ways to work with them. You know, I have adult clients, but in general, it's more of, if I'm talking with someone who's been down that road, being empathetic and asking, if you had the opportunity to do this differently, teach me, tell me, what is it that could have been done differently that would have improved things for you or changed your path? Because that gives me data. Going back to that data again, I want the data so that when I work with 20, 30 somethings as new parents, that I can help them to understand that, hey, this is what it could be like, but it doesn't have to be.
That's really good stuff that you continue to get data, because my message is always like talking about the amount of empathy you have to have with yourself, right? But the fact that you use that to get data to improve your services, I really like that.
Thank you. Yeah, to me, it's an ongoing battle in many ways, and some might think that battle's too strong a word, but it's not.
No, not at all. At all.
There's always someone out there, whether that is in school, with friends, socially, with family, or in the workplace, that are being beaten down every single day emotionally, and they just can't get past that.
Yeah, no, and one of the humbling things I think for my career too is looking at my career 30 years from now, I'll probably have some similar thoughts like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a humbling nature to that as well, knowing that our understanding is going to grow greater and greater as well. And so I do think having empathy is a big deal in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are the challenges. What are you encouraged by in the field?
The first thing that comes to mind is the fact that people are learning that ADHD doesn't stand alone, and that you're not, when you think about education and even in coaching, the way that we teach coaching skills, is that you're not trying to teach the ADHD sort of out of the person. That's the neurochemical piece. It's the executive functioning. How do the changes in the brain impact your learning? And so the more that we dig into executive function issues, learning disabilities, in addition to mental health issues, which are often part of the package, it's allowing us to have a more inclusive educational system. I mean, I remember when I first started, they still had those kids, in quote, in another room. We don't do that anymore. Universal design, all of the different things that are now available and expected. As a coach trainer, half of the people that come to training have some level of neurodiversity. Well, there are expectations in my company that sometimes others who do this similar work say, well, why do you do that? Why do you have all these different ways of communicating? I said, because not everyone learns. What are you going to do if a student who is blind or has slow processing? Everything needs to be on paper, on video, repeated, slow down, whatever it is, to make sure everyone learns and nobody feels like they're being singled out. And that's what's happening more and more and more. And that's what I love about that level of awareness.
Well, my next question for you is going to be the gaps that we're still seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I can think in my own practices, that's still a gap for me. And I think a lot of other educators is, how do we make the information we're teaching more accessible?
Yeah, it's so hard. And it chokes me up, to be honest with you, because I don't want to be in this place now, 30 years since I started, and still know that they're a battle. Education for educators is still lacking that piece. Teachers have to specialize in special ed or get a certificate on the side to really understand neurodiversity, understand ADHD. In colleges, in undergrad, and even in some master's programs, it's better. But depending on what the curriculum is at a college or university, teachers will come out, and I've met teachers even in the last 10 years who've said, does that really exist? Scary.
I'll give presentations, you and I both do professional developments. I'll give presentations where half the teachers in the room haven't heard the term executive function.
Yeah.
That's like one of the cores of not only teaching and learning, but also neurodiverse students, is how do we fill in these gaps? And, in many schools, 10% is a vast underestimate. You're talking 30 of your kids in your class struggle with something.
Yeah, and that's where I find that resistance to shifting to more inclusive practices. It is more work up front for teachers to create things using a universal design, and also figuring out, well, how do I teach a class and reach everyone? Because that's not how they were trained. So for some, it's their own belief system that these kids just need to pay attention more, or get somebody to help them, or get a tutor, even though it's not appropriate or legal in most cases in public schools to say, put your kid on medication.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll pop out. It comes out. And it's that learning curve that no, the medication is not going to make someone smarter. It's helping them to focus, but they still need to learn. And maybe they don't learn the way the student next to them learns. And that's okay.
That's actually a good thing for humanity. It's a good thing. Yeah, no, there's still a resistance to it. There's still a resistance presenting information in different ways. And my argument is, it may be a little bit more work up front, but you're going to save a lot of time on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you fulfill all the accommodations, giving stuff in, uploading your slides into your classroom portal, giving it in different ways, you actually save a lot of time on the back end.
Yes. And the other piece that I was actually talking to a mom that I bumped into in a store, and something came up and she found out what I did. And by the time we finished talking, she was in tears. And that was just this week. And so I said to her, your daughter has gifts. The level of empathy and kindness, sensitivity, and brilliance, and the thinking outside the box, all of that is so amazing. And that's where the world needs to understand that's as much a part of having ADHD as forgetting where your keys are or not being able to organize your assignments or find them in your backpack. It gets downplayed or ignored. And then she just started telling me all about her child. And as I said, by the end, she was in tears. And she said, oh my gosh, I've been doing this all myself. And you mean there's really someone who could help? Which for me, again, like, wait, you don't know what coaching is? That still floors me because there are so many people out there and so much more information on how executive function coaching can help. And that information is not being shared with the people who need it.
I would say when I do parent presentations, it's less than 10% of people in the audience know that executive function coaching is a thing, right? By the way, do you tell people what you do in public? If so, good for you.
Yes, being self-employed and being able to help people and I never expected my career to be where it is. I was helping kids in my neighborhood. That was it while my son was in elementary school. And here I am. And I don't want to say I have no idea how I got here, but I'm still amazed every day that I get to do this. So sometimes just in conversation, because if I happen to have a break in the middle of the day and I run to a store, I've had it happen to me in grocery lines. And one time I had a bunch of teachers behind me. I didn't realize school had just let out. And I was talking to the cashier about it. And everyone said, do you have business cards? So I was putting them down the little conveyor belt. It's because they don't know and they want an answer. They want something different because what they're doing isn't working, or it's working, but only because they're exhausting themselves and the kids.
You are a much more patient person than me, because I used to tell people what I did. Like if I struck up a conversation like an airplane, and like the next 2 hours would be like a counseling session. And so I started telling people that I just rented U-Hauls because I needed a second. But I love that you're always on and always ready to help.
Yeah, and that's where it's from, because that I'm on because my heart's always on, if that makes sense.
Oh my gosh, anybody who's met you, absolutely. Besides understanding besides understanding what executive function skills are and gaps in executive function, what other gaps do we still see in parent knowledge?
I think most of us as parents, at least up until like maybe current generation of my parents, we're not accustomed to asking our kids what they want or what would help them. We tell them. And I look at it as an ask, don't tell process. Flip your questions. And if parents could start to shift and use what I would call coaching language, saying, rather than saying, did you get your homework done? It's, so, what do you have for homework tonight? What are the things that you need to tackle? Or what's on your plate for today? So that it's open-ended. They're going to answer you more readily, and asking the question, how can I support you, instead of, well, I'll come up to your room in half an hour and see how you're doing. Knowing that those 30 minutes are going to come and go, who's going to focus if they have executive functioning problems and ADHD? So being able to say, okay, in a half hour, I'm going to have a timer go off for myself, and then I'll go get mom if I need mom or dad. And so it's more helping parents to let go just enough with teenagers, and definitely with their college age kids, to be able to understand that they will have a better relationship and they will help their children to become more independent, self-reliant, and eventually self-determined by letting things shift over to give them choice, give their kids choice. Because we're not, as I said, most of us as parents, we were just told what to do.
Yeah. Well, and first of all the experts I trust, and you just repeated it, talk about getting curious, getting really curious with your children. And so I love that you said that. I'm thinking of the high school parent right now who's like, well, if I let go, my student's not going to turn in their work, and then they're not going to get into this fancy university. And then they go down this path. And eventually the kid's under a bridge or something. They go this really crazy path because they're letting go. What do you say to that parent?
First of all, I get it. You gave birth or adopted this child, and this is scary. It's more frightening for parents than for their children often, because the kids don't know what they don't know yet. And all the fears are coming from the adults who've seen it, heard it, watched it on TV, read it online. So to be able to say to the parents, I understand, and what do you want for your kids? Do you want them to be dependent on you? Or would you be willing to incrementally, and that's in my first book, Empowering Youth with ADHD, about parents, what's your role? It's about incrementally letting go. I use the dance, sort of a dance of coaching, is let me step in and tap you on the shoulder, step in. You're just on the side, sitting in the chair, watching me dance with your child, but you're not gone. I'm not excluding you. Your kids aren't excluding you, but it's helping them to realize that if they let go a little bit, that they're beginning to nurture in a way that really gives an opportunity for their child to become more self-sufficient and happier and have a better relationship with them. Very honestly, it has made a big difference taking that push and pull out of the parent-child relationship by being in there and saying, I'm going to be this objective party who can help you figure out how much information do you need as a parent versus how much anxiety is behind what you think you need.
Well, I know at Untapped, we get a lot of data, and that's our best data, is actually improving when a coach steps in, it's improving that parent-child relationship. Is that your experience as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's part of what, when I work with college students, if I just step up from high school, the issues that come up for first-year students is that if their parents were holding their hand the whole way, the chances of them persisting to graduation are pretty slim because they don't have those skills. And parents think, well, I showed him what to do, or I gave them my way of doing things and it worked for me, so why doesn't it work for them? I've heard that one hundreds of times. And trying to explain, that's the way you learn. We all learn differently. We all have different ways of doing things. And so when parents don't let go when they're in high school, they're really doing a disservice to their children because it makes it much harder for them to just take that leap and go to college.
I mean, we're going to have to pay the piper sometime, right? Maybe we don't get into the Ivy League school, and maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's okay. You've worked with thousands of students. What patterns have you seen that really work with these students that we haven't spoken to yet?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing is structure. And I think we both know that creating a soft structure, not an enforced, you must do this exactly at this time, this place, but having students know what to expect. So it's clear expectations and a structure around their free time so that it's actually enjoyable structured time. I always push for structure and what are you going to do for fun? We always talk about, so what's up for the weekend? Yeah. No, the other stuff, the stuff that's not about study. and how do you make that happen? And using it as a motivator also to say, free time comes with finishing up what you need to do. And how do you balance that out? So that's really important. And sometimes students will push back and say, I don't like structure. It traps me. Then they understand that they're creating the type of structure that they want. And then it's, oh, this is very, very different. So again, that clarity, the structure, having the opportunity to be at choice and have the parents ask them, what's going to be best for you? Scaffolding, knowing that parents, educators, other adults in their lives are going to slowly remove that, but slowly. No one's going to pull the rug out from them. And so by going through the process as they improve, that helps the students to feel more secure and they're willing to take risks. I mean, we want them to take risks, not the risks that are like, oh my gosh, you just got behind the wheel and did something you shouldn't have done. But it's really about, well, I don't know whether to go speak to my teacher. Okay, so what are the risks? What do you need in order to do that? Well, I don't know what to say. Okay, maybe we can work on that. And we can help parents to do that with them as well. So it's those patterns and really sticking with it. And I will say that a hard part, and my heart goes out to families who are struggling with the adults with ADHD and their children, because maybe structure was never introduced to their parents. So that's when it's nice to be able to work with the family and say, how do we structure this so that you all get something out of it? So it isn't, the student will follow what the parents are doing, and students say all the time, well, I was supposed to do this and this, but my mom forgot, or, my dad was still at work and didn't pick up his phone and what have you. So being able to help everyone helps with it. And I know I've said structure a million times, but that's a big piece. The other one is making sure that young people understand their diagnoses. The number of times I've heard, I have to take my special vitamins. Awful.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful.
Do a lot of families you see still, because I remember that was a big thing when I first got into teaching in the early 2000s, where it's like, we're not ready to tell him or her yet. Do you still see that?
What I see is that they're telling them, and they're telling them as oh, you poor thing. It's a negative thing, rather than let's take a look at these psychoed reports, or let's talk about both sides. There are things that get in your way, and then you have these gifts over here. You have strengths and you have challenges like every other human being. And that's the piece that really isn't out there yet. And therapists and the psychologists who do the testing can help families do that. Coaches can too. I mean, we can do that within the framework of our jobs just by giving information and helping. Online forums, understood.org, Attitude Magazine, CHAD, all the organizations out there that provide information. I'm still finding myself having to lead people to them.
Yeah.
They don't know they're there, but once they see something or sending a great video, it's like, wow, in 3 minutes, you can all sit here and laugh and realize that there's good stuff. The negative patterns that we've sort of talked about are not doing things for their kids, not giving students the independence that they deserve, not giving them a chance to fail.
Yeah.
And there's fear of failure for many parents, as you mentioned, about not getting into a certain college and going on into a certain career. Well, that's their wish. That's their plan, not their child's plan necessarily. So being open to those choices and helping them have a better conversation with their parents. We do that a lot, to say, okay, what do you want?
How forceful do you get with parents when you see that? Do you get pretty forceful as a coach? Saying how you said it to me, like, this is your dream, not theirs?
I'm not a forceful coach. I am very honest. And so my directness is more of, I hear you and I get that that's what you want. And what I've learned in years of experience is that what you want and what you envision isn't necessarily what your child wants. And in order to move forward, it's really important to ask what they want and to help them explore, because sometimes the goals they have are unrealistic. And that's what you're hearing. Let's figure out how to change that. I mean, that's what we do in coaching, but it's also about exploration and that curiosity that you mentioned. That if parents can be curious instead of, oh, you won't make any money if you're an artist. Or I had a family that I was going through different college options with a student, and he said, well, I'm not going to be going to college anyway. And I said, well, over the last month, that's what we've been working on. That was your goal, is to figure out where you wanted to direct your talents. And he said, no, my parents don't think it's a good idea. They said I'm not going to make it. And I asked his permission. I said, may I call your parents? Because I'm a little unclear here of where we're going. And hearing that sort of a surprise. And I called the mom and said, I have permission to talk to you. Said, this is what I was told. And she said, oh, absolutely. He's never going to get anywhere. So what's the point? Well, he did get somewhere and then some. And I see him on LinkedIn, and he's probably about 35 or 40 now. And he has a great life.
This is one of these things that's always so humbling to me in coaching students is 5 years ago, you ask any quote unquote expert and they say, well, the kid's got to learn how to code. And now that's one of these jobs. They're like, don't go into coding because AI is taking and so I always come back to that when I'm here, because it may not sound right to me. That being said, I don't know. And if it lights them up with their ADHD or executive function challenge, or whatever, we can work on these hard skills. We can work on time management. We can work on organization. We can work on systems if it lights them up.
Exactly. And we all know that there's successes that are always talked about out there. The Steve Jobs, when I think about Richard Branson and others, the creative types who took the risks and figured out, well, I struggled over here, so I'm not going to go over there. I'm going to go in this area that really fascinates me. And over time, I mean, from Einstein on beyond, there's just there are so many people who've been able to use their passion and turn it into success.
Yeah. And they had people around them, let them explore that versus like, you should be an accountant because I am.
Exactly.
Last question. So now parents are getting more educated on coaching. It's obviously come a long way over the past 30 years. Now it seems like a lot of people are jumping into ADHD coaching, executive function coaching. How do parents find the right fit?
Yeah, it's an important question because, as you said, so many people are jumping into it. And my experience has told me that in many ways, it isn't about where someone trained or who they're connected to. It's more of, do you understand the neurobiology of the brain? Do you have a background in executive functioning and ADHD? And do you have at least a core? I look at like 50, 60 hours. 60 hours is sort of the sweet spot for me at minimum, plus clients already, students already. So it's having someone who understands the difference between EF coaching and business coaching, because when business is slow, there are a lot of life coaches out there who say, I can coach anyone. And then my phone rings, help, I can't coach this person. And it's harmful. So for parents, it's what's their background, their training, what's their level of experience? Have they coached one student once in their lifetime? Or is this something that they do regularly? You want people with a level of experience so that they can work with sort of whatever comes their way, because no two people are alike. And we have to be flexible in our coaching, as you know. So having a coach who is also flexible and connects. If a parent finds someone that they absolutely love and they don't give their child a chance to do an interview with them, they're making a big mistake, because the rapport needs to be between the coach and the student. And I never take anyone on. And I tell people this all the time. I said, if a parent says, I will hire you and they will work with you, my response is not until they call me or come have a cup of coffee with me or whatever it might be, because that's the important bond that needs to be there. So those to me are the core pieces.
Yeah. And thank you for saying the relationship piece, because that's so massive. Like, we're going to ask our students, clients, whoever, to do hard things, and they won't do hard things unless that core relationship is there. Yeah. Jodi, thank you so much for all you've done for our field. I cannot recommend your books and trainings highly enough. Where can people learn more about those?
And the best place to go, because both the books and the training are on my website, which is JSTCoachtraining.com, and all the information is there. We have a great team of trainers and lots of information and research, which is really important to the field and for families to understand that coaching really works.
Yeah. Jodi, thank you again for everything. Yeah. And thank you
for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Executive Function for All podcast. If today's episode brought you any value, please rate us 5 stars and share it with someone who may benefit. And remember, every small step you take builds towards your success. For resources and guidance, visit untappedlearning.com. Keep growing, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.